Alrighty, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Made to Pray podcast. You're joining us on episode 91 episodes. And I'm joined today by Thompo from the Loyal. All right, mate, how's it going?
Good to see you, Clint. Thanks for inviting me.
Not a problem at all. So your bond, we've been meaning to get on for a wee while and stuff there, so glad it's worked out. What's the crack? How's things going anyway?
All good. It's good. We've a big year ahead of us this year. A lot of things planned, so hopefully they'll all come to plan. They'll all work out. But no, we've a lot of good things in the pipeline. As you know, it's hard work.
It is indeed, aye. But we'll get into that as we go along. So we'll talk about that going into the later stages of the episode and stuff. But here, give us a wee bit of a flavour of yourself then, in terms of, we'll spend a wee bit of time just talking about your connection to the band scene, how you got involved, because that's obviously where this podcast came from originally, was this whole idea of everybody has a story and whatever else. But maybe we'll just touch on that briefly with yourself. Yeah. How did you end up getting involved in a band? What was going on?
My uncle was he was in the Gertrude Star. Big character he was, and I looked up to him big style. Sadly, he's no longer with us, but anybody in the Gertrude Star would know Tommy Thompson. You know, he was a character, and he had to come down to our house and that. And I remember going to watch him when I was a kid. I would stand with my man waiting in the Gertrude coming to see our Tommy. And then I remember just a few years on down the lane. It was actually a street collection. And he must have been about 9-year-old or something. And Mom, you can come along with us here. Well, Paul, you can walk at the front. And I hadn't a clue, Glenn.
Right.
And the next thing, I remember him turning around, they were laughing, they were playing a march or something, and I'm busy throwing the bomb pole up. And you didn't, as you know, you didn't throw a bomb pole up, you were playing a march. But that's where it all began. And then the next thing, I remember getting a bit older and wanting to learn the flute. At that stage, I Gertrude were practicing in the Avenue 1, then they moved up to the Liverpool Club. And I remember sitting up the stairs in the Liverpool Club, again, the late Frank Leslie. He had us all in a row and taught us how to blow into a flute, and that's where it all began.
When was this? When we're talking?
We're going back. I don't want to give me age away. but no, that would have been, I would only have been about, I would say I'd have been 10 or 11 at the time. But probably just before, coming up that teenage years. And
so the Liverpool Club was done since we're talking about what, early 80s? Yeah, early 80s, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that's where it began anyway. But then what happened there? All the mates, well, they were going to city rivals, weren't they? They were all joining the Pro Boys at the time. And I was Gertrude. And then obviously because the mates had all went there, and I jumped ship off their way. And that's like Barcelona Real Madrid at the time. Do you know what I mean? I was bonkers, like. But and then we were all in, me and the mates were in the Present Boys for years. Some brilliant memories with them as well. Good time. And then, believe it or not, jump back again. Me and that mate, big Tony Jones, me and him bounced back to the Gertrude for a while.
Right, okay.
So I done a wee stand there again and then back again. So we were back and forward like a yo-yo. But that's what you done back in the day, like. I know some good times.
Good stuff. And how long were you involved with bands then? I mean, obviously, I know from talking to you previously, a wee bit of a break now, but how long were you walking with the bands?
Well, I would have been, as I said, I'd done a wee stand when I was a kid, like, not much. But then when I joined the Present Boys, I remember as playing, my first parade was the Ulster Saves No Rally in 85, 86.
Yeah.
86. And that would have been my first parade weapon. And the next, I was on it then for about, I think I was in the band about 15 years. I've been out of that band scene now 25.
Right, okay.
At least 25 years. But no matter what, no matter how long you're out of it doesn't leave you.
Yeah.
Like, when you had asked me to come on here, I was thinking about things and whatnot, and I remember all them years being out of that band. See the 1st of July killed me. See standing watching the 1st of July parade, East Belfast, destroyed me. But as I say, I never, if somebody had said to me, you'll be back on a pawn again 25 years later. I told him the wage up. I
Yeah.
had no interest or whatever. It just, although it never leaves you, I had no plans to ever go back to a pawn.
Sure.
And then things developed with Loyal. And
Yeah. And we'll get into that as well. What was it that made you kind of walk away? What was happening?
Personally speaking, I had my daughter. I had the child at the time, and that wasn't the reason. There was no problem there in that department, but the competition scene wasn't for me, to be honest. And I had seen the band was on at the time, starting to walk on a Friday night, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and it just became monotonous. It was too much.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my own personal reason. I was just, and you're working and you're trying to get on with it. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
Life was in. And as I said, had our daughter and I was out working, and then you were coming home from work on a Friday night and you had to get rushed to get home, get out. Same thing on a Saturday afternoon, Glenn. And then a Saturday night, and it just became too much.
Yeah.
And that's personally what put me off.
Yeah, no, it can be difficult, and I think that's one of the things that whenever we talk about and reminisce about, the back in the day kind of thing, I talk about that a lot, you'd have been out, like for us it was Thursday night practice, Friday night parade, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday parade, Sunday night practice, and I mean that became your life. And I think whenever you're maybe 10 or 11 years old, that's great. You can kind of get caught up in the middle of that, but once you start hitting, more responsibility and stuff, that really starts to take a toll. So you took some time out then, and then obviously you've done a Frank Sinatra, haven't you? You've made a comeback, haven't you?
Bigger than Wesley. Totally out of blue.
But so talk to us a wee bit about what was the driving force behind the formation of a new band in East Belfast.
Well, the Loyal were totally unplanned. The way this worked, it was crazy. But I'll talk you through it anyway. So basically what happened, again, it's no secret, 95% of our band were all members of East Belfast Present Boys at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's two very, very close friends of ours who, as anybody that knows our band, knows the story. And two very close friends of ours, Ian Ogle and wee Keezy, the band, we decided that we would form the band in their memory. But how the band came about was basically, it was Ogie's first anniversary, and whenever, as you know the story, when Ian was murdered and that, there was a vigil, and there was a few bands from East Belfast come up and played at the vigil and whatnot. And then a year later, that was his first anniversary. So there was a wee memorial parade organised in his memory.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with him being a member of the Present Boys, they were going to come up and do a wee parade.
Mm-hmm.
Basically just round the block and then round the Clune Place and whatnot. So for whatever reason, unbeknown to ourselves, 2 weeks before, they were unable to attend. Don't know if it was due to getting the members because they're apparently so their members were all over the place that come from here and there, weren't all just from East Belfast, But anyway, so the next thing, I'm laying in the house watching the TV, phone rings. Thompo were trying to get all the ex-members to get here to do this wee parade for a family.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? And here's me. All right, when is it? 2 weeks. Here's me, 2 weeks. I haven't lived at a flute in 20 odd years. So anyway, here's me. I count me in, and this says, look, we're going to get everybody to car as many times as we can over the next 2 weeks. We'll learn a half a dozen tunes. We'll wing it and see how it goes. So anyway, I was down. We were practicing in the Wee Raven Social Club, and before now, the Present Boys lent us their flutes, drums, bass drum, and the members that could do it, they attended, but the majority of it was made up by ex-members. So we done the wee prayer. We practiced with some crack too. You know, it was good to see the boys you hadn't seen in a while. You know, it was good that part of it. So we were doing practicing, a few paints and that, bit of crack, you know, a score.
Oh,
and we had the wee prayer that night. And when we come back, a wee bit of a do on after, and we had a fantastic night, and it just brought it all back.
Right, okay.
The camaraderie, the crack, everything. So, of course, after a few pints, wouldn't it be great if we could do that, you know, maybe 2 or 3 times a year to get us all back together. We night out, or a day out, a bond, and because that wee bit of a buzz was reignited that night.
Right, okay.
So, that's where it started.
So it kind of started off as a wee, almost like for a special occasion, or for, you know, for some of us who maybe haven't been involved with a band for a while, a wee opportunity to kind of get together a few times a year, go out, walk about, do a parade, and hang out together. That's really it, yeah.
Well, that was it. Now, as I say, what happened? A few pints deep. Oh, wouldn't it be great we could do this more often, or even 4 or 5 times a year, blah, blah, blah. So that was all right. The next day, it was all, you know, forgot about it, basically.
It's left at the bottom of a glass.
Basically. So a couple of weeks passed, and then the next thing would have bumped into each other, 1 or 2 of us, and wasn't that some night we had, and blah, blah, blah. And it started to get a wee bit of momentum again.
Mm-hmm.
So, excuse me. So, the next thing, can't remember who, but they set up a wee WhatsApp page so we could all keep in touch with each other, because one was ringing one. But what we done was we put it in their WhatsApp chat, so we were all.
Yeah.
So that brought everyone together more. So it started to grow legs. Like, it started to get the momentum. It's growing big time. So, bear in mind, now we done that wee parade in January. And our band officially formed, and I think it was the 30th of June, if I'm right. It's not a big crack, but it's a couple of days before 1st of July anyway. And what we done was, as I say, there was a lot of you chatting on the WhatsApp. What about this? Would be great if we could do that. Would be great if we could do this. And basically what we said was, right, here's what we'll do. You put your money where your mouth is. So we're going to meet up the stairs in our Raven on Sunday. And if you're serious about this, you'll come down and you bring 100 quid.
Right, okay, well.
Right? And that would have put it to bed then. Here's us, if they commit to that, you know, they're serious about it.
Yeah.
So we didn't know what was going to happen. So we were sitting up the stairs in our Raven with 2 Davis, and the next thing, nor one way on, nor one. And I remember I had a wee jar, and I'm sitting writing the names down, wanting that, and collecting the money, and they're coming in, and here's me happy days, and it ended up 33 people.
Wow.
And every one of them, both. And after we were still watching the door, 33 lads in, and we went, lads, we've got ourselves a band here. And that's where it started. That's where it started.
But that was what, 5 years ago?
Well, this is our 5th year. So this is our 5th year. And you know yourself, Glenn, what it involves, and it's been hard. You know, it is hard. You know, it's one thing talking about it, but the last 5 years, and to be fair to all the lads in the band, they've really knuckled down and they've put the effort in. And don't get me wrong, there's been times we've been at each other's dumps, but that's
how things happen when you're forming things up. You know, and people have opinions and things about where we should go and how we should do things. It's only natural that you're going to get, you know, some of that there. How did you then come up with gaining an identity for the band? Because it's one thing, as you say, to say, listen, let's get together, let's form a band. But how did you go about shaping an identity for the band? Because obviously it's from an outside point looking in, it seems to me like you wanted to do something that was a wee bit different from what you had been involved in before. Yep. And it'd be great to hear the story behind that.
Well, again, when we set the WhatsApp group up, all the lads were putting in their ideas. And what we done was, Glenn, we turned around and we said from the offset, everybody will have an equal say. There's no hierarchy in the band. Everybody will have their say, your ideas, and we'll look at everything. And the good thing about it was everybody was contributing and see everything they were saying. We were all like singing the same hymn sheet.
Right, okay.
So, and we were lucky in that sense. You know, the majority of the lads were all like, they had done the competition thing. They were not knocking competition. You know, you need it. It's good. It's healthy. But they had done it. All the lads are like, we've done that. You know, we were more like, we wanted to get together, make a day of it, go out and enjoy it. As regards our style, again, we were all, luckily enough, singing the same hymn sheet, and we were trying to, the way some of us some of the lads put it was like traditional, old school, with a wee bit of our own wee twist, you know, and we're still finding our way.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're not the finished article by no means, but we're plugging away. And as I say, we were all kind of aiming towards the old school, a wee bit of old school, and even the tunes we play. You know, again, without being disrespectful to any other band, every band has their own style and whatever they do. But with me personally, right, being away from the band scene for so long, I just noticed whenever you were watching the parade or whatever, the bands and the crowd, there was a disengagement. There was, you know, something missing. And your bands walking past and they were playing tunes, like, I'm sure you've seen it, Glenn.
Oh, well, you have no clue what they're playing.
Yep, right. It's just like notes wrote down a sheet, and they're just right. And we have, I'm sure you know Pip Bar.
Mm-hmm.
Pip's a good guy, mate. He's in the band, you know, and he takes care of all the tunes and whatnot. He would come down, and he's basically left to it because everything he brings to the table,
everybody's good.
All the lads are all for it, you know. So, we've been lucky in the sense that anything we've aimed for, all the lads have been up for
all behind it and stuff. Because some bands struggle, you know, especially new bands, you know, getting off the ground and, you know, kind of forming an identity, getting, you know, yourself set up. People having, as you say, multiple ideas about what way you should go and all this kind of stuff. And if people are far apart in terms of their ideas, now it can cause a few tensions and stuff. But you really went all in. For me, whenever I look at it, you really went in on the old school kind of thing, because your uniform is a throwback, I think, in terms of that. But also the fact that for what I would consider to be more like a Blood and Thunder band, you also went for low tension drums as well. You know, so
that's a topic. I'm maybe not the right man to sit and talk about our drums, Glenn, but I'll tell you,
I love it. I think it's great.
We went for the in the 5 year. I'm not. That's it.
I can see you're struggling here.
Yeah, I'm laughing, and I'm sure the lads watching will be laughing when it comes down to drums playing. But anyway, we went at the start. We just basically went for the first set of drums we could get our hands on, to get us out on the road, and they were like buckets. But they done the job. They got us going. Then we bought another set of drums. Again, I'm not clued into the whole drumming thing, but as you say, we got the low tension drums, and then they wanted high tension drum, changing these heads. Again, the drumming's not my department, but it's a touchy subject in our band, to be honest. But we're getting there. As I say, we're still bent our way.
But I think even just from that, that helped kind of set you apart initially as well. I think, you know, because, you know, some people might have expected, you know, a more modern, for want of a better word, a more modern Blood and Thunder type of style, maybe given the heritage in terms of the membership and stuff. But whenever he's rocked up with like the maroon hats and all this kind of stuff, and I think when I seen it, I was like going, one as somebody from the Raven, maroon knocking about on the street is great. I love it. And I wish we had another maroon uniform, hint band. But I just thought it was a great setup, and it was like kind of going, there's no one else in the East Belfast scene that was decked out like that or playing like that and stuff, you know. So I thought it was a great.
Well, that again, that's what was said and what discussed, and that that was the type of stuff we were talking about. Let's do things a wee bit different, and let's same as uniform again. And like, thankfully, all the lads, and myself included, all the things we're getting through in the mix, and we were going, and we all accepted it, and we says, right, let's go for them hats, and a few more wee twists and turns coming, but we'll keep that on.
That's all our old school stuff. Let's keep the uniform stuff a secret and all. But why do you think you have succeeded where others, have maybe tried to start new bands and they've just fallen away by the wayside?
There's a couple of reasons, Glenn, to be honest. One is it wasn't, when the band formed, it wasn't like a case of just a group of lads getting together in a hall, let's form a band and start from scratch. All the lads in our band, thankfully, were seasoned bandsmen, so to speak, and they'd been in the band scene for 20, 30 years more.
Yeah.
And so they were well experienced in that end, thankfully. So it wasn't like you were sitting, learning the scale and having to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And, so we had, that was like
an advantage straight away.
Right. But the main reason we succeeded so far and got to where we are now is the support from the communities, and further afield. Some of stories, some of help, the things that, because everything now costs a fortune, and as I said, we turned around at the start and says, right, lads, it's time to put your money where your mouth is now. They all come in with £100, but the way things are, it's not going to get
you very far.
It's not going to form you up on, like.
Yeah.
So we went about our business and we started selling stuff. We started off with key rings, believe it or not.
Right, okay.
But the help we got from people, from a few businesses, and from people in the community, some of the stories, Glenn, I have to tell you this one. There's a few lads in our band, right? And their grandmother and grandfather, Mr. and Mrs. Mealy, unfortunately, Mr. Mealy's passed away.
Right.
But Margaret, Mrs. Mealy, her son and her grandsons are in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And this is proper old school, like.
Right. So
Margaret, she was all busy up hearing we were forming the band and whatnot. Now, she's quite a big family. But what Miss Mealy done was she got this envelope, sat it in her hall, and she made all her family, every time they come round to visit her, she made them put something in the envelope.
No way, straight up.
Oh, they wouldn't get in the house. So every time they called, did you put anything in the envelope? God love her, like, and all the fun, and she came down and the donation, her and Roy, unbelievable. Things like that, Glenn. And that is the reason we have succeeded, because even touched on where Ogie and wee KJ, their families have been behind us 1,000,000%. They have been great with us. And just even the Raven Social Club, as I say, there's so many people. I'd be scared to leave any one out, Glenn. But the reason we succeeded was because of the support we have got from the community, mate. It's been second to none.
Would you say that's been the biggest challenge that the band's faced in regards to the whole idea of fundraising, or would you say is there something else that has been more challenging for you?
No, it is a challenge. There's no the challenge I feel. Well, I'm sure the lads would all agree. Keeping it together, keeping them interested, keeping the ball going, trying to get what you need, and again takes money, and you have to put the effort in, and blah blah blah. And it's like any band or any football team. You get ones put the effort in. You get people push it more, and you get frustrated because you look back and there's maybe, but you're always going to get that, But some of the stuff with them, the fundraisers at the time, and as I say, anything we did organise, Glenn, it was very, very well supported. We had a big event. It was our first year, and we had a big event in the Europa Hotel, and we were lucky, a lot of friends from Glasgow, contacts over there and so on, and we were pulling all the favours in. So it ended up, we were sitting, what could we do? Something big, and I think it was our first year anniversary, the first year, and we says, let's have a big night in Europa, And Nate, like a black tie, Nate, we're going to make a big night of it. The waves and the partners and all be involved and, you know, get them all, the togetherness. Mm-hmm. So we organised this night in Europa, and then again, it expanded. And so they ended up, again, luckily enough, with the contacts we got 4 Rangers players over.
Right, okay.
So with Willie Henderson over, Graham Roberts, Mark Hatley, and Marvin Andrews. And so we're all busy with getting the players over, and you knew I was going to sell tickets. Mm-hmm. It was going to be a great night. So me and one of the lads in the pond, we went over to Europa. We were having a meeting with a girl in the hotel, and we were busting the trap at in. Is it all right if the band plays? You know, Europa Hotel, the middle of the Boss League. So we were beating about the bush, and we were trying to throw it into the girl, and eventually she knew, she bit the bait, and she says, what is it, a band? You just want to play? And here's all I. Is that all right? And she says, no problem. And we were happy days. But Claire, I'm not joking. See the next room. We only found this out about a month before. Oh, God. There was a GAA. There was a GAA party happening in the next room. And believe it or not, as the night went on and the band had went on and played, couples were going out to a toilet, a couple of them, the GAA boys were going, it's the only way we can come in. That sounds far better, aren't it? But again, come back to, well, we got the Rangers players in, and then the next thing, and this blew us away. Like we got a message asking would it be all right for Lee Rigby's mother and father to come.
Wow, okay. Which
was a huge, you know, privilege. It was a huge, like that was huge for us. And we says, where did it?
How did that actually come about? Where did the connection come from?
Again, it was one of the contacts for Willie Henderson. Somebody that knew Willie, and she knew the Rigby family well. And the Rigby family were going about with a few of the players and doing things similar in England and Scotland, but they never came to Belfast. So we says we're at out. It's an absolute privilege for us to have them there. So as time went on, the night became bigger. You know, the run up to it, was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But what a night we had. You know, it was fantastic. As I say, we had the Lee Rigby's mother and father and his sister, and then 2 close friends, another close family who has supported our band big times, the Lockharts.
Right.
Young Dean Lockhart, he served in the British Army at the time. He was friendly, or his parents are very friendly with our band. So we invited them 2 families together as our guests of honour type of thing. But again, it was a great night for a band, and it got the band a few quid and pushed us on our way to, you know, up our game with instruments and whatnot. So,
but that's the big, you know, outlay that every band is going to get, is the instruments and it's the uniforms and stuff there. You know, I mean, we were talking with the guys from the Imperial Guards.
Yep.
You know, and they were saying they probably dropped the guts of about 50K easy in terms of that there. I'm sure you guys are probably in a similar position. Like, you
don't realise, see if you sat and tallied it up. It's funny you actually saying that, Glenn, because it's something I've never really thought of. But like Imperial Guards, they hit the ground running too.
Yeah.
You know, they came out and they came back in the day, you know, you'd V-neck jumpers and
exactly, that's it. No, a pair of school trousers and your mom was on a blue line on them.
Like, right? Whereas now, like, there's the Imperial Guard. Like, don't get me wrong, we had a pair of trousers, a shirt and a hat, and that does us.
Yeah.
You know, but there's the Imperial Guards come out and they were, you know, on fair play. It's great to see.
Yeah.
You know, it's good, but I know.
But it's a massive outlay. It really is.
Oh, it's like anything at the minute. It's all money, and you're asking what do you do to keep it going? You know.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. See, you need that in, and you're trying to do that. You're trying to keep the ball rolling, kind of. You're trying to keep a lot. But we were lucky. All the lads, as I said, it wasn't a 1 month thing. It was a collective thing, and they all bought in it.
And it sounds like, because you've had that connection previously, that's played a massive part in terms of staying together, I think, in regards to that. How have you found that in terms of keeping your membership base? Because for me, looking in on the outside, it doesn't look like you have fluctuated too much in terms of a membership base.
Well, here again, when we were talking about what we wanted to be and what style and what we were going to do, again, a lot of lads had touched on it and do it in the mix, and they says, it's not a numbers game. So, and I agree. See, when I look back and know now, but they knew better than me because they had been in the band scene a lot, years after me. But they turned around and says, right, it's not a numbers game. We don't need the 30 drums and we don't need and don't get me wrong, you, like I've seen your podcast, Glenn, and you see our bands on and the kind of way do it in there. We're open for new members and blah, and which you'll never turn anybody away.
Completely not.
But we were kind of way at the time. We were always like, right, if we get the ratio right, 10 drums and 20 flutes, we'll be happy. And we've been lucky. We've had that, and it's fluctuated a bit. It went down, but luckily it's come up again. So it's always when you lose.
I know, but you always seem to have had consistent numbers on the road. I mean, I haven't seen you out looking going, God, they're down. Do you know what I mean?
Well, as I say now, we've always been. We turn around and we go, if you have 20 fluters on the books, yourself, fluters are hard to get.
Yeah.
Drummers and bass drums,
Damn, it doesn't.
They'll fall out. I mean, I'm not saying that. No, but all joke aside, the flute corps, we always say if you get 20 flutes, 2 or 3 can't make it, or whatever. If you get down to 16, 17 flutes, still not bad. It's a good stage band. We're happy with that. Same as 10 drums, a couple can't weigh in, 8 drums. That does us. Again, I'm not knocking any band. Each band, their sales. It's just, we wanted that range, didn't want like 30 drums and 20 flutes. It's not our stage.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work for us, so we've got the balance, and basically it's working for us, and that's where we are, man.
No, that's good, because you're mentioning something about, average size of bands these days. You're probably talking, most bands are maybe talking, 4 to 6 drums, 12 maybe plus flutes if you're lucky is kind of a standard band size. There's exceptions to that, but when you look around the average in terms of some of the bands not going to be, that's what you're talking about. That's, you know what I mean? If you're pumping out 12, 14 flutes, 68 drums every parade you're at, then that's decent numbers. Decent numbers, you know what I mean? And I know there's other bands that go below that and stuff, and you know what, fair play to them. I think of the likes of Castle Derg. Castle Derg travel the country with like maybe 6, 7 flutes and stuff, and a couple of bass drums, and they're up, and they sound great. You know what I mean? Because other bands would look at that and go, wow, 7 flutes, we're not going out.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So,
exactly.
But it's good to keep that tradition aspect alive, in terms of saying, well, listen, let's just get out there, But
no, fair play. I mean, again, we didn't want to create the monster that you want 30 drums and you want 40 fluters, and the members get used to that, and then if they do fall and says they can't handle it, walking mad. Well, that's big. We don't want, as I say, we're happy with the ratio we have, the numbers we have, and as I say, it works for us. What we touched on earlier about what's hard, I think nowadays in the band scene is the kids coming, and the likes of Castle Derg, you'll probably find a lot of them boys are getting older, and their numbers are dwindling, which is something the kids aren't coming through.
That's it. I think a lot of bands are facing that though, mate, because, we're a victim of that. The Ravens a victim of that in terms, we've an aging membership, and all it takes, for a few members either to get sick or kind of go, listen, this is beyond me now, and the next thing you know, you're 2 or 3, 4 down. Do you know what I mean? Well, that's it. You know what I mean? But I mean, I think that, as I say, I do think there's a lot of bands that are facing that as an issue. I think even the Miller Memorial are hitting that kind of area. I mean, I know there's other things around there, but I know you look at them and you can't go, good grief, that bond's up in the years there, and even thinking like the likes of Netherton in Scotland and stuff, good solid bond, but the guys are well up in years in terms of the membership and stuff, and if you're not bringing in youth in terms of that then the chances of longevity are slim.
You look at all the MO laws and that parade MA.
You got to get that in, didn't you? Well, because I was waiting on a time to bring that in, because obviously I was talking to Scott before we started recording, and he was saying, make sure you say hello, because there's a similarity there, isn't there, in terms of the male's comeback story, you guys kind of coming along, this idea of let's just see what happens if we get together, and hey, there's a bond from way back in the day, a classic bond from way back in the day, obviously, killing it again, and back doing what they're doing, and doing rightly and stuff, so yeah, good. I'm sure Scott will love that. He loves a mention. He loves a mention anyway, so he does. You know what I mean?
They're that bond you're taught. They're a great bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And come back, asking me when I was younger, Prada Mail was all about. That was the bond inspired me. Like, the Mail were fantastic back in the day, and it's great to see them back again.
Yeah, it's good to see them back, doing what they're doing. And I think one of the things that's been great for me is that they're not just a nostalgia act, you know what I mean? No. I think, it could have been easy just to come back and do, hey, let's play the hits, for want of a better, let's just walk around playing Scarborough for a minute as a place and all that kind of stuff. And, you probably got away with that. But I mean, they're not prepared. They're not sitting on their laurels. No. I've heard some of the new stuff that they're coming up with, you know what I mean? So they're still trying to make an impact and stuff. It's about time they got a record now, to be honest with you. So it's about time with another.
We need a few things in here.
we need album 3. We need, we've had the Pride of Ed's better.
But maybe do
it on tape. That's it.
But we were lucky, and you actually took part on it, Glenn. The Pride of Valley.
That's right, yeah.
Again, them boys up in Great Ways too, supporting. There is a lot of bonds who have been brilliant with us too, supporting us along the way from day one. Again, I don't want to leave any out, but the Pride of Valley, when we're done there, we day up there and
the culture day,
and the Pride of Mail were, and our friendship, a lot of our laws in the bond have friends in the Pride of Mail for going back decades, like Big Willie McCallum, Big Bogey and all, Big Malky.
Yeah.
And it was great to get the gala that day, right? Just to get the gala for a beer and a bit of crack. But we were sitting chatting away, and the Mail had played, and then we got up after. I think we were the band before the end, and I think the Pride of Mail got up. Years ago, believe it or not, I was invited to guest with them. And for one reason or another, it didn't pan out. But that day they got up. I think it was Scott called me up, and I got up, and it was a privilege to play with them. I always loved them.
Yeah.
So then when we got up, I went over to a few and says to them, what about getting up here and we'll play? Because we stole Scarborough Fair. Right?
Everybody stole Scarborough Fair.
Everybody did. I know. And I remember going over and saying to a few, what about getting all the boys up? And we all got up the gala. If you remember, there's a few just got up along with us. And it just worked. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
We played that at the end of the car. And we're actually in contact with each other right and regular. And we're hoping that we can do something similar again.
Yeah.
Maybe over in Glasgow or whatever. But
no, it'd be good to get them over here again, in terms of, it'd be good to get them out on the road, because I know initially whenever they reformed, the idea was just for, it was culture days and things like that there. I don't think they had any inclination initially towards parading again and stuff. And now they've done on quite a few parades and stuff. But they're not. I think they were thinking along the same boat. If you've got older lads there, maybe thinking some of even the bass drummers and stuff, being able to carry a drum for that, a length of time and stuff. You know what I mean? It takes its toll, but it's good to have the innovation back in the band scene. And I suppose that leads me to my next question. How has the band's sound kind of developed over time? Because you mentioned we went through traditional style tunes, lower tension drums, potentially high tension drums coming back in or whatever else. Talk to us a wee bit about how the sounds developed over the time for you.
Again, you're always trying to improve. Pip's hitting us with new tunes. As I say, this year in particular is by no doubt the biggest year. Hopefully everything goes to plan. Will be our biggest year. Pip's pushing the life out of us with new tunes, and for the reason being, we're actually planning. We're going to a Somme.
Oh, right, okay, brilliant.
Going to Belgium, and we're travelling up to Somme as well. So Pip has come down with a tune list specifically for it.
Right.
So it's all hands to the pump, and we're getting your Callaloo and you know all that. But again, as I say,
don't tell me they're playing parts and all, are you?
Well, dude, Pip, he gets carried away. So he does. He gets a bit carried away. We're trying to learn it, and he's doing a bit of seconds.
Right.
We thought it was somebody making a mistake.
Right.
But no, it's all good. It's again, it does. You know what? The pressure's on because we're going to June, and we're just trying to knuckle down to get these half a dozen tunes in the mix.
Yeah,
you want to go over and be the best version of yourself.
Completely, yeah.
You know, especially over there.
Exactly, and when I think whenever you think about what it is that you're going to do there in terms of commemorating, you know, the fallen from the First World War, but then some elements of the Second World War and beyond and stuff, you know, and I think that, you know, because that's something that we've talked about quite a few times on the podcast, you know, and the amount of bands that are now making that pilgrimage, you know, in terms of the France and Belgium, you know, it seems to be that every other week there's a band making a trip out and stuff, you know, and it's I think it's an important one to make for bands, given the connection and the sacrifice that was made
100%
from Ulster, you know, in terms of, especially in regards to the Somme.
100%.
It's a massive part of our identity. In terms of that, you know, the more bands that can do it, the better. I say, do you know what I mean?
Oh, great!
You know, so that's had a major impact on tune selection and stuff. Now, is that something it'll be a temporary addition, or is that stuff that you're hoping is going to become a natural part of the repertoire?
No, I think that'll stay. We'll keep it. You know, it's always good to expand your tune list.
Yeah.
You know, we've got our tunes. We're not concentrating. We had our tune list. Anyway, as I'm sure you've heard in the CD or whatever, but we are expanding it now so that we've the right material to go to a song with, but we'll keep that, you know, and then God spurs us after we're going back. We'll maybe add another few tunes, maybe a couple of tunes here and there, drop one. You know what it's like, you know.
How do you go about that process? I know you obviously say Pip does the majority of your tunes. Do you then have a say in terms of dropping? Because that's one of the things that I think I know that we struggle with as a band in terms of the Raven is having a massive playlist.
Yep.
And then whenever you bring learners in and they're looking at, hey,
that's daunting,
my God, how many tunes do I have to learn? Because I mean, that's a repetitive story that I have over and over again whenever people talk to me about my days of, you know, learning how to play. And that list that we had in those days was absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And you had to play all that off by heart before you go on the road.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? How do you handle that?
Well, again, it's a collective thing. You know, as I said, the way our band formed up was the Symbol Boy has as much say as the band cat. You know, we just throw it all in that mix. So we'll have our practice. You have your wee meeting after. We'll have our ideas and we just put it out in the open. And if somebody brings it up and says, why don't we bring a new tune in, get rid of this one, then we'll look at it collectively and do it. And it works. You know, there's no like a dictator. There's nobody like, no, we're not doing that, we're not. But it works for us, you know, we just assess it. And if we want to do away with one, bring a new one in.
Yeah.
And as you say, the tune list, it could get out of hand.
Yeah.
And it would put new people off.
But one of the things that we noticed, and that's just it's just the strange thing when you terms of trying to find a balance. We made a cull. There was a culling of tunes, and what we noticed was that when we hit the 12th last season,
you had enough.
Well, it was like when we were going the year before, walking out and walking back, I don't think we played outside of the size or maybe one other tune. We didn't play the same tune twice.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? It was just, and then you know that you're always, you know, you always have that's the beauty, I suppose, of a large repertoire. But I think the difficulty is keeping a quality in a large repertoire. Yep. And I know for me, like, I mean, back when I was a kid, learning loads of tunes, Not a problem. See, now I retaining the stuff. I'm like kind of going. Are you kidding me? Like
I'm certain I'm going to say me. Where's that going? Start that again. But I think that's early age too.
I think there's an element of that because I think you'd be loads of you'd be surprised how many bands have that and they're like, how's that go again?
I
wouldn't even playing it for 40 years, but you know,
I know.
You know, so but one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about as well was you'd mentioned that you'd been out of the scene for a while, and what have you noticed that's changed about the scene that's better than it was whenever you kind of walked away?
Oh, it's when I get back personally, the difference, the band scene now is completely, it's off a regular scale now compared to what I was used to.
Yeah. In what sense? What are we talking? What do you think?
Well, it's good in ways, maybe not so good in other ways. Obviously, the way the bands, you know, their uniforms and whatnot, their instruments. Like years ago, your drums were like buckets. You know, you just they had anything.
Yeah.
But no, the whole obviously the competitiveness. You know, the competition scene, something that I wasn't a big fan of, but it did lift the bar.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's the way that they come out, the uniforms and their instruments and whatnot, that is a massive change.
And you can see that when you look back on all the old videos and stuff, you can kind of see that change happening, because for me it was like, I know you do that change the scene kind of thing, but you had the change in style and appearance that the likes of the Skull, the Male, and a few others kind of brought in, and then you could see people making the change and stuff from there, you know, because I noticed a massive change because I always hark back, and I tried to get, whenever with Chino on the other day, I tried to get him to talk about the brown uniform that the Pro Boys had, you know, and I was like, was that just spare material that somebody had land somewhere? But because the Pro Boys are always known for like a light blue, a sky blue kind of thing, or and, you know, but then you noticed a change there. You know, it started to get really serious.
You touched on it earlier, us with a burgundy.
Yeah.
I always remember your sales. Priority of them were burgundy. And believe it or not, that was an accident. What happened with us?
Right.
There's a story behind that. Okay. A story behind that. But no, as you know, Gertrude were always red, you were always burgundy, Pro Boys blue, and so on. But no, we were, I'll tell you a bit about it, but what happened was we had organised the club to get measured for our first uniform, and we were still toying about what colour we're going, what we'll do, what blah blah blah. So that was all right. We're all met, and there was a couple getting in, a couple coming out, and fews were standing with Davey and the Azzy, and we're standing in his shop, and we had nailed down the two shades of blue. So he actually had a sample pair of trousers and a shirt for us, right? And he had them laying in these boxes, and we're standing there, and half a dozen was standing. And the next thing, we asked him about something. Anyway, what's that there? I don't know if it was a hat or what it was. So next thing he says, "Where am I leaving over?" And he lifted it. But before he went over to lift it, he had a belt in his hand, right? And he threw the belt down to reach over to grab the hat, to show us the hat. And when he threw the belt down, he threw it on top of our trousers and our shirt, and it was actually a burgundy and navy belt. It's actually the belt that we have now, but it's burgundy, I was playing red. And see when he threw it down, I'm not joking, the half a thought, we all just stood and looked up one more, no leg. Check that out. It worked, you know, it looked well. And it was slightly different. So we turned around and said, Davey, listen, we need to add that on that mix. And to be fair again, all the lads, there was a couple of lads in the band, burgundy hat, there's no way I'm wearing a burgundy hat. But when it came, and we liked it, and we put it all together, and we added this, and we added that. And I think that's what we're running with now, you know. Yeah. We'll always keep that combination.
I love it. I think it's great. I was going to say, I think it's brilliant. So it is. So one of the things that, you know, we talk with some band members about is their connection to the community. You already mentioned a wee bit in terms of how, you know, certain elements were instrumental in terms of you becoming a band and making sure that you know, got what you needed. How have you tried to stay connected to the community?
Well, again, as I say, the support that we received, I can't emphasize it enough. And it was second to none, and it has been, and it hasn't wavered. Glenn, it's been absolutely unbelievable. I have to give a huge special mention to the Raven Social Club, because from day one, they've been there for us. They've let us use the bar. You know, it's became our home, basically, and they've been fantastic. We was anything we want to organise, run, or any wee charity dues or anything like that. They're fully supportive. It's been huge.
Yeah.
So then what we've done, we expanded on that a bit. What we've done every year, the community in itself were fantastic, supporting the band financially or any way at all. And we always say from day one, you have to give back. Yeah. You can't just take. You got to give back to the community. So every year, from we formed, Glenn, we have a wee Christmas charity do. It's a wee kids day, you know, for kids, and we hold it up in Willowfield Church, the big hall. One of the laws in the band, we card, so he takes a lot to do. That's his topic. That's his thing, and it's got bigger every year, and it's for all the kids in the local community. It's for the band members' kids, grandkids, and whatnot. And honestly, it's a fantastic day. You have bouncy castles. The kids get their faces painted to see Santa, all that. You know, just it's general. But it's brilliant. You know, it brings a community. It brings the kids from the area. And we've been lucky that we do that every year. We also, again, the elderly around the community. Now, before we hadn't done it this Christmas, we weren't able to do it this year for certain reasons. But we would have took dinners and that. We Sammy Spears, we Cafe in the Arches, he provided all the dinners and that, and we took it round the pensioners in the local area. Again, it's letting the community know that you're not going to just take, you have to give back. You know, and again, the question, come back on one of the questions you asked, what have I noticed as regards changes in the band scene? That's one of them. The band scene now, the stuff they do for communities, the stuff they do for charities, it's fantastic. You know, again, that wasn't heard of years ago. The whole band scene's changed that and for the better. You know, they do great stuff, as you well know. Your band does it. The stuff they do for charities is fantastic. Like.
Yeah, and then if you know, like, well, like I'm thinking, like, you know, the work that Johnny Bean does in terms of in terms of his, you know, his day job kind of thing. The organization he's kind of set up there kind of permeates that's his kind of thing as well, isn't it? You know, and you can't help but not be influenced by that type of stuff. You know, in terms of having an impact on your bond and your outlook on your bond whenever there's people in your, you know, in your membership that are passionate about things that as well, I
was born to pick with him, like, because he was mad to be here beside me, and he dodged the bullet.
Well, Johnny's already been on, so it is. Johnny was on one of the very first episodes, but that was back whenever he was obviously a member of the Protestant Boys and stuff, and I have been trying to get him on for a panel. We're looking to do a panel. This might be a good time for me to plug that as well. As we're looking to do
some great work.
He does, you know. Brilliant. But we're looking to do a panel around the 12th of July. I don't know, that's a subject we were talking about pre-recording and stuff. So we're going to have some guys in from the County Grand Lodge, some members of the band scene, and say, well, listen, what are some of the things that we could do to enhance the 12th? You know, I think there's room for change. You know, I know that's a touchy subject for some people. But you know, for me, one of the big things around the 12th is I would love to see more of a connection to the historic event that it's commemorating. You know, I know there's the odd thing here and there in terms of, you know, obviously there's the banners, there's tunes and stuff. I'd love to see some kind of reenactment or some 100%. Kind of connection to, you know, the events at the Boyne happening on the day. I think that just it makes sense for you to have it, you know. And I know that they have the sham fight that happens at Scarva, and Scarva is an amazing day for everybody. But I just think, you know, the 12th of July is the commemoration of this. I think we should have something in regards to that. You know, I think there's other things that we could do, you know, and I think some of the stuff that maybe even, you know, thinking of the, you know, Johnny working with, you know, in terms of special education needs and stuff like that there. I definitely think there's room for that as in part of the 12th in terms of how we accommodate, kids either with disabilities,
100%.
learning needs, etc. That there, I think there's definitely something we could be doing there that would, and it's not just being done for the sake of it. For me, this idea, because a lot of things that we get level, you're not inclusive, you're not this, you're not that. And when you look at, the range of kids and people that are involved in bonds, there's a racial element, there's there's people from other there's not just white people involved, there's not too many, but at the same time it's there's kids with disabilities. I think that the wee guys in Tully Cornet, the wee guy with a one arm, the drummer and stuff, and I think there's one of the guys, maybe I don't know, is there a wee guy in North Down Defenders is in the same boat as well, so, and I think that's an element that we need to be emphasizing for the sake of it, but we need to be emphasizing saying, hey, whenever we get this bond that you're not really inclusive, well, hey, well, let's have a look at that and see, well, what do you mean by inclusive? And when you look at some of the ranges of people that are involved in bonds, I think, that would fly in the face of popular belief, like, you know what I mean? So, but you've got some ideas about the 12th. You're very much the traditionalist. You're not up for changing too much there, are you? Not to throw you under the bus, sir, but...
No, as regards the 12th, obviously last year, all the rumours the Orange Order were going to change this and change that. I wasn't a fan of it, to tell you the truth. I know it is it's a long parade. That's a given, and we touched on it earlier, we're all getting older, But to me, yes, there can be change. But there's the way you go, there's things you can do, like number 6 could go so far, and you've Sandy Road district could maybe leave from Sandy Road and go to the field, but I don't know. But I think it needs to be round the table and talk instead of the Orange Order just coming out and going, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
They need to listen.
And I think that's right, but you walk a fine line there as well, because I know there's been some times whenever, I put some stuff across, and I think going, well, you're a bondsman. This is, not the bonds day. Well, that's debatable.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Without the bonds, it doesn't have the same kind of appeal. That's a long-standing point. But I think, there's definitely something there in regards to that we can collaborate more together in terms of enhancing the experience for everybody.
Yep.
Because things like, the gaps in the parade, the leaving times, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that I think for me was the idea of potentially changing the route to some degree could have a massive impact on some of those issues.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When you think about it, by the time you get finished, depending on where your district is in the parade, you could have maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours of a break to try and go away, have something to eat, come back and stuff or whatever else, and then it becomes a bit of a rush and stuff. You know what I mean?
It actually spoils the day.
Can't do.
And I think a big problem is when you've dictatorship, see when they're dictating, this is what we're doing, end off. It's never going to work, because you touched on it there. The Orange Order could turn around and say, but sure, it's not the Bonds Day. People aren't going to come out. We've had this discussion. Round and round.
We both need each other.
Exactly. And the only way it's going to work, Glenn, is talking together.
Exactly.
And coming up with a plan. Look, why don't we do it this way, or why don't we look at that? Because just to lay the law down and go, look, it's never going to work. No,
and I get where they're coming from in terms of in terms of the longevity of the organization, and maintaining traditions extremely important. But I also do think that there's room for, I would use the term enhancement. I don't like, some people don't like the word change, but I like the idea that enhancement. How do we make things better?
Well, here there's two things I think they need to look into, and you were mentioning there about how could you make the 12th of July more of a, like a better parade or whatever. There's the pageant, Carrickfergus. And we've done that the last few years, and what a day.
Oh, yeah, that's turned into an amazing parade.
It's but one of the best parades of the year now. And that is getting bigger and bigger every year. And they do, the reenactment.
The historic thing, yeah.
To me, they need to go down that road, and they need to be going, floats or whatever, and tell the story that, in other ways, not just through flutes and drums and
exactly other ways, other art forms and stuff. I'll have to say, I think a lot of the reasons why the pageant's growing is because there's definitely people want to see King Billy falling out of the boat, like, you know what I mean?
Oh, there's a few falling out of the boat that day. Like, it's a great day.
Yeah, but it's a great day. It's turned into an absolutely fantastic parade. You know, I remember doing it when it was a lot smaller than that there, but it's grown into something else. And when you get the weather down in Carrick, it's
a full family day.
Yeah.
You know, you get down there, Glenn, as you know.
The atmosphere is brilliant.
The atmosphere is second to none. And they've all the stuff, amusements laid on for kids. And again, you look at our 12th of July parade, you walk up that field, there's nothing there.
And that wasn't always the case.
It wasn't.
Always
everybody
the case.
stayed at the field. It was
exactly.
It was a family-orientated day. Yeah. It was a day that the families all stayed up there and got their
stalls and things 100%. Like that. I know things are different now, but I mean, you did have that because like, you always look forward to, hey, I wonder, like new tapes and all this kind of stuff, you know, and all that kind of. You could revive something, you know, in regards to that and make people want to be around. One of the things I was really inspired by, there's a wee place around by Wetherspoons. You know where Wetherspoons is in the Dublin Road?
Yep.
Do you know around beside that there's like a wee courtyard area?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Where it has a few street food trucks in there. That's a stage and a wee thing like that there. I think I'd see if you had an area like that at the 12th. Where you had caterers and you had some performers and things on. I mean, I'd stick around for a bit of that.
100%. But that's the things, Glenn, they need to build on. And then it's like a vicious circle. You know, then younger generations will probably get more involved in it because they'll see this. Oh, that's more appealing. You know, they don't want to walk up for 12, 13 miles to an empty field.
Exactly. And to do,
you know,
like what here? There's a lovely oak tree.
But there is things that seriously need to be looked at. Like, it'll get worse. Like,
well, one of the things do you know what I'd love to do? And this is me maybe stealing the thunder from another episode. I would love to see just once every blue moon that the 12th of July took place in Drogheda.
Right. Drogheda?
Yeah.
No, sorry. 100%.
Right down at the Boyne Heritage Centre.
Well, we get down, Glenn, we get down every, the run-up, the 12th of July.
Because you pick up the Boyne Water, don't you?
So we get there. We've done that the first year, Glenn. And again, our band formed, and from what formed, it was all about traditions. And that was one of our traditions. We'll get down, grab the Boyne Water, and
then you pour that out just before you leave. You walk off, don't you?
Pour that across. But the response done that years ago, back in the day. And what we do now is we bring that much back. Our bond's going, keep us a wee track. So there's a load on doing it. But again, it's just an old tradition. But as you say, you know, it's how it would be perceived down there. Like
I mean, you've a massive area there in terms of the Boyne Museum down there. Brilliant. I mean, you know, and I'm sure for me in terms of the whole idea of reaching out and inclusion and here helping people understand where we're coming from. You couldn't get much more, you know, than here. Let's once every blue moon have the 12th of July parade at the area that the battle actually took place on. I mean, I has to be a winner.
You know, you get beyond this something.
You know what I mean?
I don't think people don't talk about it.
I don't know. I
don't know, but I know what you're saying.
I would say that there would be an inquisitiveness there about, because I tell you what, there's nothing that would change a stereotype than actually having that type of celebration in your area.
There was one year we did get there to get the water in it, and again, it was only about, you know, it's about a tradition. And we got a few haggles, like.
Yeah.
So that was just for getting a drop of water.
Yeah.
But again, it's something to get looked at. I'm sure Glenn built a point. You know?
I'd love to do. I'd love to have, and this is just me dreaming again. It was, but the idea in America they have these fife and drum musters. You know, they kind of gather on all their fife and drum corps, and they have like an area that they all meet up, and then they have a wee small parade, and they gather together in this area, and they all perform and stuff. Yep. And I had always this idea of, wouldn't it be amazing if we could have something like that down at the Boyne Museum, the centre down there, and having like a muster, but also not just a bands from, you know, artists, but inviting some of that American fife and drum kind of tradition and stuff, and having this kind of collective experience together down on the grounds of the boy and heritage. I'm telling you what, I would love
it. You could be onto something.
You know what I mean? I think it'd just be amazing because those guys are absolutely fascinated with our culture.
I know.
You know, they absolutely. I mean, see Blood and Thunder bands. See, talking to the guys that are in the fife and drum scene, they love Blood and Thunder bands. They're just like kind of going. The bass drummers fascinate them.
Yeah.
You know, just in terms of what on earth is going on with some of the shapes these guys are throwing, but they absolutely love it. And I think there's actually, is it this year? I think it might be this year. There's 2 or 3 cores of American fife and drums coming over this year. One of the guys had been in contact with me about saying, would we be able to get involved in some of your either parades or activities and stuff like that? 100%. Right, yes.
Yep.
Right, you know, let us know when you're coming over and we'll definitely get you hooked up with some people.
But again, come back on what you said earlier about what changes I've seen. There's the likes of yourselves doing the tattoo. Years ago, you know, that's high, that's the level you're at now. And you have to keep, you have to keep
pushing.
Well, you have to remember too, these bonds are all just ordinary working class guys. That's a big statement, the commitment that you have put in there to be able to go and perform in the likes of a tattoo. Unbelievable.
And I think that over the years, you know, the fact that they have attempted to bring in, you know, local bands and stuff like that there, and I think it's great. But for me, the idea, it's great that you get that opportunity there. What I'd love to do, I'd love to see happening, and hopefully it will happen, is that being exported to the tattoos that happen around the rest of the world.
Yeah.
You know, because for me, the idea, wouldn't it be mad if you could see one of our bands at the Edinburgh tattoo? Now, the chances may be slim of that, but hey,
what
do you know what I mean?
Because it's happening in Belfast.
But you know, in terms of Basel, there's a massive fife and drum connection in Basel. In terms of and the Swiss side of things, there's massive connections in regards to some of those American tattoos. Shout out to Mark Rayleigh at the Washington tattoo. If you fancy inviting us along to that there again, Mark, I'd love that. You know, to be honest with you. And then you've got
the Loyal could go to Basel here.
There you go. With the maroon hats and all that, you fit in rightly. So, but even London Bomb Week, there's London Bomb Week are exploring the possibilities of, you know, some, you know, like a workshop around.
Well, the regimental, they done.
They did the Lord Mayor's show there, and then Lord Carson as well.
You know, so there's a lot, you know, that's some changes from back in the day. Like,
exactly.
Right? I mean, it shows you how much the bonds have progressed.
Like. In terms of musician ways and stuff, I think you'd be hard pressed to find, you know, a subculture as such that has such a high level of quality musicians that are attached to it and stuff, you know what I mean? So in terms of, you know, we mentioned about one thing, you're going to the Somme this year. Yes. What are some of the other plans in regards to the future? Without, obviously, there's some stuff you'll want to keep close to your chest. Like,
there's a couple. Again, see the last, as I say, Glenn, this is our 5th year. And I'm not joking. The 5 years has been full on. Like, we have been full pelt. Like, you know, from a form, and you're trying to get your instruments, then you're trying to upgrade them, you're getting uniforms, you're trying to get members in. Then we decided that we would love to go to a Somme, because we keep joking about the age thing, but none of us are getting any younger, and it's something close to us all.
It's bucket list material.
It is. That's exactly what it is. And we turned around and we went, listen, yes, we want to do Glasgow, we want to go to Liverpool, we want to do. Let's do the big one, you know, and we've planned it, the band's going, and again, I touched on the Raven there, a lot of our band are in the first Raven Psalm Society, East Psalm Society in the Raven, so we're going to Gala, which is good.
Brilliant.
Excuse me, which is good, so we've got it, we've had in the pipeline. As I say, it's been full on, and the first 5 years, Glenn, went like that.
Yeah.
And with the CD, we've done it. We've crammed so much in the first 5 years. And to be fair, it does take its toll too, you know.
Yeah.
So this year's going to be a big year. Everything comes together. We'll enjoy it, but it'll kind of way be good. See when we achieve it and we'll do it. It'll be good after it as well, because it'll be the first time, I think, from the band's form that we can go right, lads. You know, the Gala will all go right.
Let's hold back a wee bit here. Let's take a wee bit
That's
of
just chill out a wee bit and just be a
Yeah,
band.
you're going to need it. You're going to need it because that's
You burn yourself out.
Completely. That's one of the things I think we found after doing so much last year, because we did the song, we did the tattoo, we did a number of trips to Scotland. There were some massive things that happened for the Raven, and we found that once that we were done with that, people were tired.
Yep.
And they kind of go, because I think there were some weeks we were down 4 and 5 nights a week. Pumping and practicing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're like, at some point down the line, you've got to go, hey, we need to chill out here.
100%.
You need to chill out.
We're feeling that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. We've stuff for, as I say, we're pushing for, we've things coming up. You're trying to fundraise, you're doing, but as I said, we'll enjoy it, but it'll be good. It'll be good when we achieve it, and we're going to look back at it and go, right, we jumped over to Scotland, it'll be good, or things that doesn't involve as much,
hassle and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, even if you fly to Scotland or whatever, or when somebody arrives on a boat with your drugs and stuff like that, then happy days.
There's another thing there. We have a wee project we're talking about. As I said, it's only at talking stages at the minute, but we're talking about people doing a pilgrimage to a Somme every year. As you know, the bonds it's getting more and more and more. But there was something there a few lads had touched on, and ourselves, the band and the Somme Society, we're looking into, and it's there's over 150 Commonwealth war graves in Thompo Cemetery.
Right, okay.
And when you think about it, everybody does that pilgrimage, as you say, to Belgium and the Somme, and on our own doorstep, you have all them Commonwealth war graves. So we're talking in the background at the minute about, we're hoping before Armistice this year,
right?
We're going to get a collective group, and we're going to open it up.
Right, okay.
So we're hoping, all our bonds and whatever, but basically all it'll be is to go up and tend to the graves, tidy them up.
A clean up kind of thing.
Clean up, because I tended to, my great uncle, my great grandfathers up there, who both First World War, and there's ones around them, and they're sitting, and you can I'd give them a tidy up, but you couldn't do. There's over 150.
Yeah, okay.
But it would be good. We've been talking about it, but good to get up there. It'd be a project. Bring the younger ones with us.
Good opportunity to kind of teach about
education.
Yeah,
let them explain to them what it is, what it's about, and what we're talking about. Maintaining them a bit. Laying a wreath at them all, where they maybe haven't had any attention for years.
Performances or something, you know what I mean?
Again, it could grow, but that we're talking about that. Again, I'm saying we're going to calm down here off this. But
you're already talking about that,
But no,
but that's part of the fabric of community life there. I think, if there's bonds out in the East there that are interested in getting involved, keep us up to date with how that, because it's definitely something that I think, a lot of bonds would be interested in being involved in and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So if you were to think about a legacy that the band was going to leave behind, I know you're only 5 years in, but what would you want the band to be known for in the years to come?
Well, definitely remembering two very good friends of yours, keeping their memories alive, the both of them. There were two very good friends of yours, two good lads, as you know, it's horrible what happened, the story. The both of them had horrible consequences. One was Wee Keezy, unfortunately, had a work accident.
Yeah.
But there were two passionate guys in the band scene. Two real family men. Their families came first. Their work off that was the band scene.
Yeah.
They loved the band scene. As regards our legacy, that would be the main thing that we remembered our two good friends. And we tried to keep our memory alive as best as we could.
In terms of maybe standout moments for you, in terms of your time with the band, what would you say has been the most rewarding kind of moment with the band so far?
Our very first parade, was the 1st of July. And the stories. There was a lot of rumours. There was a lot of there was bits of controversy, and being honest, and people are aware. People know the story. It didn't come from our band because we were too busy keeping our head down and getting the work done and getting the band off the ground. But while we were doing this, and it came within the band, not the whole band scene, obviously, but certain areas in the band scene. Very, very small minority. But, you know, there was rumours of this, and you were hearing all this. We were a breakaway band from that. We were this, we were that. And we just brushed it all off. We ignored it. You know, yes, there was a few members left certain bands that come to us, but you get that, you know, them lads that did that have their own reasons for doing it.
But I think that's indicative of the band scene now, because one of the things you'd mentioned earlier on about that initial parade that meant that you ended up forming was, you know, local East Belfast bands have a membership base that goes way beyond East Belfast, way out into like other counties and stuff and beyond, you know, Coleraine and Londonderry and Portadown, you know, they're all involved in East Belfast bands and stuff. So I think the days of that, you know, colloquialism kind of thing, you know, is gone too.
Yeah, I know. But no, we were too busy, you know, cracking on to get the band up and going. But going back to the highlight, it had to be our first parade. So it did, because of, again, you heard all the old talk, we brushed it off, we ignored it, we didn't get involved in it, we just stuck to our business. And basically all it was getting the band formed and remembering two good friends of yours. And we were sceptical, you know, we were going right, we didn't know what to expect. But honestly, when we walked that 1st of July, the first ever parade, honestly, I'm not ashamed to say it. There was times around that route I was close to tears.
Right, okay.
The reception we got was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Honestly, you know, and then there was friends of ours, and there was people who aren't in bands or anything were coming up to us and going, yes, we're great. Now, I'm not blowing our own trumpet. We're not the best band in the world, you know, but they were coming up, tell us, we're like a breath of fresh air. It was great to have, you know, and we were blown away. Honestly, I can't explain that. We were blown away by it. It was fantastic. It was something that I'll never, the whole time from I was ever in a band, I've never experienced anything like it. And I don't think I ever will. Like, it blew us away. Like, you know, it was emotional too, because, as I say, our band strongly, you know, and we make no apology, we don't need help, but them two lads were very, very good friends, lifelong friends of yours, and it means so much to us, and it means so much to a lot of your people. And the fact that we've done that and what it was all about just made the whole thing. It was, honestly, I can't even put it into words, Glenn. It was amazing, mate. The support. We were getting text messages from our bands and bands from Glasgow. We were, believe it or not, there was actually people, expats from Australia, or living out in Australia and all, were tagging us.
Brilliant.
New Zealand and everything. Had seen the footage maybe on YouTube or whatever, and congratulating us and saying how well the band looked and how we conducted ourselves, and that's what we do. We just try and do it as best as we can and as respectful as we can, you know.
I think that's a great place to kind of to leave that there, mate, you know, but in terms of that's the standout moment, and that's the kind of thing that's kind of spurring you on in terms of the future of the band and stuff as well. So, man, thank you very much for taking the time to come down and have a conversation with us. What we'll do is, I know you'd brought a couple of CDs. What we'll do is, once you're away, I'll come up with a question, and we'll do a wee giveaway. We'll give one of those away, and somebody can kind of, get a hold of that there. I really appreciate that as well. So, man, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciate it, man.
Thank you, mate.
All right. Alrighty, folks, so that's the end of that episode of Made the Parade podcast with Thompo there from the Loyal. I really hope you enjoyed the conversation. Great to hear a bit about the history of the band and some of the things that they've been through in terms of what their 5 years of existence. They did give us a copy or a couple of copies of their CD here, and what we're going to do is we're going to give this away. And what I'd like, well, in terms of giving this away, what we're going to do is the person who leaves the 50th comment on the podcast, on the episode on YouTube, will win this CD. So that means we're going to have to get 50 comments in order to win the CD. So in light of that, make sure you like the video. Make sure you comment on the video, because if you want a chance to win this, you're going to have to be the 50th comment. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel for more. So until the next episode, look after yourselves and take it easy.